Joining me now to discuss this new venture of China is Professor Srikanth Kondapalli of JNU. Thank you so much, Professor Kondapalli, for joining us. Let's begin with the ambition that China holds. Where do you see the International Organization for Mediation headed? We see 30 countries have joined in, but I'm sure those are countries that have influence that China has influence over.
Thank you for having me on the show. We do not know the trajectory of the recently established International Organization for Mediation, partly because they have not mentioned about the organizational structure, the ideology, and focus areas. They did mention about 3 subjects that could be picked up as part of the mediation: between state-to-state disputes, secondly, between state and foreign nationals, and thirdly, with the private enterprises or companies abroad. So these are the things that they mentioned. And the second thing they mentioned is arbitration, not arbitration, mediation.
Yes.
So when you compare that with the International Court of Justice and the Hague Tribunal, the subject matter is different with these 2 institutions. So it is mediation. Mediation, as you know, is between A and B, and the dominant party generally wins over. Even though Foreign Minister Wang Yi mentioned there will be no zero-sum game, and he also mentioned win-win cooperation. These are all Chinese terms, and in practice, there is a lot of problem with these. So we do not know exactly how it is going to pan out, but this is a significant move to indicate that China is not satisfied with the current rule of law, the international rules and regulations that we all inherited in 1945 as part of the international liberal order. So China is expressing its dissatisfaction, and so it is a revisionist state wanting to have control under its leadership over a lot of things. With 32 states as part of this current effort, we do not know whether it will become big or not, whether it will be able to challenge the current status quo institutions in the West, or it will lead to revival of rules and regulations. Number 1.
Right.
Yeah. Number 2, this is also an expression of dissent on the Permanent Court of Arbitration ruling on the South China Sea in July 2016, when China walked away from the arbitration council of the Hague Tribunal. And the Hague Tribunal gave a verdict which went against China. When we compare that with the Bangladesh complaint on India, and India finally gave up those 2 islands because the Permanent Court of Arbitration gave a ruling on this. So India abided by the rule of law, while China has a different idea altogether. Also on other issues like the Outer Space Treaty, or on previously PTBT, the Partial Test Ban Treaty on the nuclear issues, China had a different view, and it indicates that China is growing very suspicious about the international legal procedures. Yeah. Thirdly, they have chosen Hong Kong because Hong Kong used to be a free port, rule of law, and has a lot of soft power in terms of arbitration procedures. And the last 5-6 years, they are down because of the national security law that was implemented, and a lot of people, thousands of people, are bumped off in Hong Kong.
Right. A very important aspect. There are a lot that you've touched upon. Let's unpack a few. Let's begin with why at this point in time, why at this juncture. Although they are suspicious of the organizations that exist, But we're also seeing a lot of mediation. America trying to mediate peace between various countries. China having done it in many ways than one with the very same countries, but moved ahead in some quarters ahead of America itself when it comes to mediation. Could that be one of the reasons why they're looking at why shouldn't Beijing be doing what America intends to do, because they've already made a foray into that space?
I think there is a difference between what the Americans did and the Chinese are doing. Americans are still overall, even though Trump administration walked away from the WHO, from climate change, from the threatening to go away from the WTO or other multilateral institutions. Trump had done that in his first term and also threatening to do, and in fact has walked away. The budget for the UN has been shut down and other things. But this is an exception. What is important is China also mediated, such as between Saudi Arabia and Iran, Sunni Shia related mediation.
Yes, exactly.
It has also mediated between some non-state actors in Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania. It had done so with other entities, both state and non-state. But what the International Organization for Mediation is trying to do is not about these mundane conflict resolution issues, like we saw in Saudi, Iran. There is no dispute as such between the two. I mean, it is an attitudinal problem, and it is about the Shia-Sunni historical differences. There is nothing legal about these. These are religious issues or other regional issues which have no major impact on the international legal system, nor have any implication for the international legal system. It's not an interstate conflict between Saudi Arabia and Iran that has gone to an international court of justice or other institutions. So there is actually a difference in these. Why now? I think, number one, the Trump isolationist policies are providing an opportunity for China. Since Trump is walking away from various institutions, this is the best time for China to assert itself. And in the 19th Communist Party Congress in 2017, President Xi Jinping mentioned in the party Congress work report that they want to move towards the center stage. And so China is making moves in this direction to influence the global power and is establishing institutions which could be, in the long run, help China to become number one in the world in terms of the leadership. So they began the BRI, Belt and Road Initiative. They have the Global Security Initiative, Global Civilizational Initiative, Global Developmental Initiative. They have also set up several other institutions, like the APSCO, Asia Pacific Space Cooperation Organization. And the gel is that they want to build a community of shared destiny. We don't know exactly what it means, but it is at a minimum partnerships. But I don't think the Chinese are just looking for partnerships. It is, in order to become the leader, you need to have friends and allies in the international system. So China is trying to gradually move in that direction. And so this International Organization for Mediation is one of those tools for China to assert its leadership in the future.
Right. Professor Kondapalli, just wanted to understand, if you could break it down for us, these over 30 countries that have signed on this organization, what are the countries? What's the sphere of influence over here? Why are they part of this organization?
Well, China has this Belt and Road Initiative, whereby they have invested about $1.2 trillion. And through this, some 80 countries and about 20, 30 international organizations are participating in the Belt and Road Initiative 3 summit meetings since it was launched in 2013. So what has happened in all of this is with the Chinese investment, there is a softening of many countries, number one. Number two, China is the largest trading partner for over 128 countries. So China is also trying to weaponize trade by insisting these countries participate in the mediation and under the Chinese leadership. So these are all things which cannot be put in black and white, but many countries have benefited from the BRI projects, even though the primary beneficiary is China itself and its state-owned enterprises. But it has softened up many countries who now have joined the International Organization for Mediation.
Right. Also, a very important aspect over here is that there are many issues and disputes that China is involved in, whether it's Taiwan, South China Sea, the dispute with India. In such a scenario, there are going to be no-go areas. Can countries go to this organization for mediation on these subjects? Because that certainly is a no-go area and a red line for China, especially Taiwan.
That's true, but Taiwan is governed by also the Taiwan Relations Act, which China had signed with the United States. And so in the 3 communiques plus the Taiwan Relations Act. So in the case of Taiwan, China cannot simply resort to the IOM and have a one-upmanship on the Taiwan issue. Likewise, on the South China Sea. South China Sea is bound by the UNCLOS, United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea, in which China lost in the arbitration. Now, possibly China can do some mediation with Vietnam, with Malaysia, if not with Philippines. That is quite possible. They can do mediation with Brunei. However, these are not internationally recognized, like the International Court of Justice or the Permanent Court of Arbitration. These are not internationally recognized. The International Organization for Mediation is not under the law, international law. They can do some mediation between A and B and then come to a conclusion, but that is not recognized internationally. So the Chinese effort currently is to get this legitimized and later on possibly be recognized and then push it off as a legally recognized later on. If the two parties say that they have concluded a mediation agreement, it's quite possible that the issue doesn't exist anymore.
Right. What's the kind of pushback you're anticipating from the West, from these international organizations, also from countries that do not want to see China also take up a role of a mediator, a peacemaker, so to say?
Well, there is nothing that other countries can do in terms of a pushback because these are arrangements between A and B. In the case of China, A and B, some other country, or a private institutional, foreign institutional investor or enterprise. So there is nothing that others could do about this. However, others could openly criticize or openly expose if there is any deal making between China and other parties. It is true that international community requires mediation so that some issues can be resolved because not all legal issues can be resolved. And we did see for over a long period of time, such legal issues have been around. So mediation does help. And China's soft power possibly could expand. However, the most important thing is whether such mediation can be long-lasting. Because that is not international legal recognition. It is informal mediation between A and B.
Right. Also, a very important aspect in all this is that China has had some success, like you pointed out, the Saudi Arabia-Iran peace deal. That was a major success. We've not seen America really have that kind of success in any of the negotiations they've been involved in, although Professor Kondapalli, Trump is trying to take credit for the India-Pakistan mutual understanding to hold fire. Having said that, in a scenario where we have a Trump administration, what's your reading, if you've been looking at things that are going around the world, what's your reading on how countries are going to look at China as a maybe better or at least an alternative to America?
Well, actually, the Saudi-Iran deal has not been very successful. It is true that the Chinese have cobbled up this understanding between them by organizing several rounds of discussions, which is very complicated and time-consuming. So China did exhibit a lot of patience in bringing Saudi Arabia and Iran together. But actually, Saudi Arabia and Iran are not together right now.
That's true.
They have huge disputes on the neighborhood, on Syrian developments, on Gaza. A lot of issues are between them. China painted that it is successful in bringing both of them together. To an extent, it is true, but not completely so. And the recent visit by Trump to Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and other countries indicated too the differences between Saudi Arabia and Iran to an extent. In the case of India, Pakistan, China is actually one of the active actors in the India-Pakistan conflict. China provided 81% of its arms to Pakistan, valued at around $21 billion. Secondly, China actively supported the Pakistan-based terrorists by, number one, providing the messaging services to one of the terrorists in Pahalgam in April 22-23. Thirdly, they have supported Pakistan in the 1267 Sanctions Committee of the Security Council. So China is not mediating here. China is actually on the side of Pakistan. So this is actually problematic. So the credibility of China will be questioned if we can trace the selfish kind of support that China provides to other countries in a mediatory role. So, and international media is watching China's actions. And hence, I do not think China is a neutral actor here in the India-Pakistan conflict. So China needs to actually build up a lot of goodwill.